Peter, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service to this country.
Thank you.
What did you learn in the Marine Corps?
Well, the Marine Corps has an impact on almost every Marine for a life, learning to discipline, honor, courage, commitment. Those are not just buzzwords, they are actually the way we live.
Yeah, and I'm sure that served you well.
It has served me well through my entire life.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and tell a little audience about CBC retirement.
I've been in the financial services business for 45 years after leaving the Marine Corps. I went through college and then went into the Officer Corps of the Marine Corps and served in Vietnam. And for 45 years I've been specializing in tax-efficient strategies. It's turned into a family business in addition, because now my son-in-law, who's an attorney, has been with me for 20 years. And my son now has been with me 12 years, because a lot of people look at me when we introduce some of these advanced tax strategies and they'll say, hey Pete, when you're not here anymore, who's going to take care of this stuff? And so it's been nice to be able to point to my family and say, yeah,
absolutely.
If I'm not here for some reason, Tim and Jamie will be able to take care of you. So it's been, and people do like that continuity. In fact, they love that continuity.
Yeah, that's great. And now you guys are based in the Maryland area.
Maryland, Washington, D.C., Baltimore area.
So who's coming to you guys, and are you seeing a median age of someone who's coming to you? And then on the reverse side of that, when should people start thinking about coming to you? But let's deal with the first part first.
It's all ages, but it's primarily business owners, professionals, commercial business owners, and their key employees who are looking for ways to be more tax efficient, to pay less in taxes to the government. And that's why we created what we call climbing the mountain of tax efficiency. Is when the tax code was first in our law in 1913, it ran about 400 pages. Today, if you printed the entire tax code, it would be over 90,000 pages.
Unbelievable.
So it's complicated. And so I've spent 45 years mining that tax code to get the gems out that I can use for clients and customers to reduce their tax bite, both not only on their contributions they put into some sort of investment plan, but also the distribution of that money. The holy grail of financial planning would be, because there's always three phases: there's contributions, accumulations, and distributions. And most people want to put their money in 401ks and in retirement plans, where they get a tax deduction in phase one, they grow their money tax exempt, but in phase three, it gets hit with every nickel, dime, and penny gets hit with ordinary income tax. And we reverse that transaction. We give them a partial tax deduction in phase one, they grow their money tax-free, tax exempt I should say, and then all the money coming out is tax exempt.
So CBC is not your typical financial services company. What makes you guys more niche and specialized?
Well, most financial advisors want to manage your money, and we don't do that. We want to manage your tax efficiency. And so we come at it from an entirely different angle than most financial advisors, and as a result of that, we're into niche arenas where we're looking for tax efficiencies that most CPAs and tax attorneys are not familiar with. In fact, we spend a lot of time training and educating tax attorneys and CPAs. So we're a bit different from that regard, and there's a number of processes we have that give more tax efficiency to clients and their investment strategies that are usually used in the marketplace.
So is there an age that someone should really start thinking about retirement? I mean, obviously the world changed in 2008. People have struggled more, lived check to check probably more than ever before. But is there an age that someone should start thinking about retirement?
Thinking about retirement is something that should be started very early. In my experience, people are waiting too late, and they've lost the time to accumulate the monies they need in a tax-efficient manner. So it's never too late to start. But you don't want to be doing it in a way that locks your money up that you can never get back to it, because we all face challenges in our life, getting our kids through college, health issues, getting into retirement, Social Security, those sorts of things. And so putting your money in, for example, into a 401k where it's locked up for the rest of your life and you can't get it out without penalty, and you're basically got a silent partner in the form of the IRS who's sitting there with wanting 40% of your money, and you can't get at it. So we use strategies that are not only tax efficient, but if you need the money for some reason, for an opportunity or a significant problem, you can get it without a tax penalty.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, I was a teacher for 14 years, and a 403B was kind of just what it was. It was
right.
your choice. And if you had your private corporation, it was a 401.
Yeah.
But are those still the most efficient places for people to be putting their money, or is there different strategies now that those are not looked at as the almighties anymore?
Well, the financial gurus will tell you that's where you still need to be in 403B plans, 401k type plans. And particularly if an employer is matching some of the money you put into those, yeah, I would say that's a good thing to do. But on balance, there are other strategies that are far more tax efficient and cost efficient than putting your money into those kinds of strategies. I know that's a bit of heresy, but that's the fact of the matter. In fact, a lot of the things we do, if you look at the costs of managing your money in a 401k or 403b for a lifetime, the things we do, we will reduce those total costs by 75% over your lifetime. Now that's a huge, which means there's more money for you because less of your money got siphoned off in fees and expenses and taxes.
I mentioned 2008 before. How did 2008 affect people, their retirement at the time, and if, let's say, they were 45, 50 years old at the time, how they thought about the next 10, 15 years?
Yeah. 2008 had a major impact, a devastating impact on those people who were getting ready to retire. I call that the red zone, which is the 5 years before retirement, the 10 years after. If a 2008 hits those folks that are in that red zone, which is why I wrote that book, Managing the Red Zone, it can devastate your retirement plans and can defer your retirement plans for 5, 10, 15 years. Now, someone who's 25 or 30, they've got time to recover. But those people in the red zone 5 years before retirement, after retirement, 10 years after retirement, have a major problem to get to manage, and they really can't do that. They've lost the time to recoup. And so that's why we like to use strategies where if we have another 2008 in the near future, or in the distant future, whenever it occurs, our clients will not lose money.
So you talked a little bit about how you guys are specialized in niche, but let's talk about some of what you offer as far as solutions that are maybe more specialized and a little different from what the norm out there is. Tell me about some of them.
Well, we have a couple of strategies. One we call the prestige strategy, which is all about accumulating money on a tax-exempt basis and then being able to access that money tax-exempt for the rest of your life, income that you can never outlive. As well as your money accumulates, if the market goes down, you have no downside on your assets. They will continue to increase. We have another strategy which we call the charitable prestige strategy, where, and this will sound too good to be true, where you can give significant annual gifts to charity and a legacy gift to charity without ever writing a check. Now, as soon as I say without ever writing a check, I get questions, well, how the heck can you do that? And we have a way that between bank financing and using a specially designed insurance products that we developed with insurance companies to do that exact same thing, is to be able to give annual gifts to charity without ever writing a check, and give a legacy gift to charity if you so choose, or to your family without ever writing a check.
So let's take someone watching this, seeing you for the first time, and decides they're going to call CBC and talk to you. Let's talk about that first time that they come into the office. What can they expect? What do you do? And then how do you structure how you guys work? What are the fees involved for someone interested in using you?
Well, when we first meet someone, we obviously want them to know us, but we want to know them. I've told my family that work with me that the relationship was always built right in finding out as much about the client as you can, because you never know where an opportunity might pop up, an issue that you can solve and an opportunity you can bring to their attention, unless you know everything about them. So the first meetings are all about learning as much as we can about the client.
Yeah.
And depending on what avenue we head down, we'll end up charging perhaps a fee for some of our services. If there's any product implementation that we need, the financial institutions will pay us a commission or a fee from the assets. But we really don't know that going into a relationship. We're really trying to solve problems. One
of the things that interests me is how much education do you have to do where someone comes to you and says, man, I'm doing great, I'm ready for retirement, and the picture's maybe in your eyes not as rosy as they think it is. Right, yeah. How much education do you have to do, like things like that?
We have to do a lot of education, but that's the process. That's one of the processes, is that show clients what the status quo is, what their life looks like today, and what it'll look like in the future if they continue down the same path. But then we show alternatives, alternative 1, alternative 2, so they can see other steps they may be able to take that will enhance their lives, and both in their family and in their retirement.
I have a personal question for you, because my parents are getting to the age now where I think, they're getting, my dad's retired, my mom wants to retire this year from the law firm. And, I look at what I think they've saved, and I've heard them talk, and I've had some hands-on experience with them, and I think, wow, they're doing well. But yet I can hear the worry in their voice about, how we pay the mortgage going on once they're both out of work.
Yeah.
Is that because people are living longer and that's become a problem that you have had to change how you do things because of that? Why do they still have that worry when I look at what they've done and think, wow, they've been successful?
And you're exactly correct. I've got good news for you. You're going to live long. I got bad news for you. You're going to live long. It's good and bad news.
Yeah.
Because of modern medicine and the way people take care of themselves, we are living into our late 80s and 90s now. In fact, it's almost a certainty that in a married couple age 65, one of them will live into their 90s. And so the question that always comes in is, will I run out of money? Will my money run out before I run out?
Right.
And that gets into the planning of making sure. You asked me earlier, when's the right time to retire? Our clients know it's time to retire, or they can retire when they're absolutely convinced that they will never, ever run out of money, regardless of the contingencies, health care, long-term care, stock market risk. Our clients, we get rid of all those risks. That's part of what we do, is put all those risks aside and eliminate the risks in someone's life.
And the way you guys work, though, is there still that magic number of you need X amount of dollars, or do you come at it from a different way, and it may not be what they, the amount that they thought, because you're doing different things to maximize other avenues?
A good friend of mine named Tom Hegna talks about paychecks and paychecks. We design their finances so that they've got paychecks that continue on for the rest of their life. Paychecks is any excess assets that they can play with, take trips, buy gifts. But what we're really focused on initially is the paychecks, because once those paychecks stop, because you're working, no longer working, we want those paychecks still to come in for the rest of their lives and never be able to outlive it. And so we focus on the paychecks part of their life. And then once we get that solved, then we work on the paychecks, being able to work with other assets. But there's opportunities for people like your parents to assure themselves, and you as their son, that they'll never run out of money, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some specific types of retirement plans. What are some types of retirement plans?
Well, there's many types of retirement plans. Usually we're talking about defined contribution type plans, and those are defined by how much money do you put into the plan each year. How much am I contributing? You don't know what your benefit's going to be, because you don't know that you're going to continue the contribution. You don't know what you're going to earn on it. You don't know when you're going to retire. But you know what you put in each year. The other type is a reverse. We define the benefit you're going to have, and then we work backwards actuarially to today. What do you have to put in to guarantee that when you get out there, you're going to have enough money to do exactly what you expect? And so we tend to focus on everything we do in the defined benefit format, setting a target and then working back to today and what we need to put aside to guarantee that we'll have the largest lump sum we need to maintain the lifestyle that we have chosen to have.
A lot going on in Washington right now, taxes on the table.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the Internal Revenue Code and all the tax,
Yeah.
what it's like, how complicated it is. How do you guys help your clients as far as managing that part of their life, the taxes that come
Yeah.
with all of this and that stuff? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, that's primarily our strategy, is working around tax issues. What's going on in Washington, we're going to have a tax act, it looks like, as we sit here today, and that will have a change in people's lives. I don't believe, however, it's going to change them that dramatically. What I have always seen when the tax code changes is that more opportunities pop their head up because of what Congress has put in, some sort of a tax package. Mm-hmm. Our industry has a way of looking at what Congress has put into the law and saying, well, if we do this, X, Y, and Z, this will now work for as where it did not work for us in the past. So I'm not too worried about that, but yeah, I think it'll create more opportunity for firms like mine to be able to help people be more tax efficient, regardless of what the tax law says. You got to remember, we're a country with $20 trillion of debt. That's what you hear always in the news. To me, that's not the significant factor. The significant factor is that when you look at all the unfunded liabilities, meaning liabilities that the feds, the states, the municipalities, and retirement plans have to pay people. There's no money in the till to do that. It's got to come out of tax. That number is over $150 trillion.
It's about 10 times
Yeah. So for someone to think that their tax bracket is going to go down in the near future, that may be true, but long term it can't work that way. There's going to have to be some sort of a recognition that the debt that we have as a nation has got to be solved some way, and the only way you can do that is by a higher tax rate. Because you've got to remember, the estate tax used to be 77%. The income tax rate used to be 75%. And with the debt we have, both unfunded liabilities and the debt that the government has at $20 trillion, is going to have to be funded somewhere on our kids' and the grandkids' backs by higher taxes. So politicians can talk as much as they want about lowering tax rates. That may be true in the short run, but in the long run, I don't think that's sustainable.
A couple of issues I want to hit on with people thinking about retirement and the planning that you do. Let's talk about real estate for a second, and let's talk about obviously your home, your biggest investment that you make and paid over your whole lifetime, and then you get to that point where you've maybe paid the home off. And what part of your primary home factors into your retirement? How do you look at that, and how should you treat it? And then my second part of that question is, parents like mine who are thinking about selling their home and they got to go somewhere, are you encouraging them to buy again, or are they looking at renting?
Well, for people who have a home that's paid up and they're in their retirement years, that is one of the great assets to look at what's called a home equity conversion mortgage, where you can take money out of your home without ever having to pay it back until you pass away. And that's a form of tax-free money. Some people use their current home with a HECM mortgage. Other people will use a HECM mortgage to buy the replacement home. And so it's a tax strategy that people are not looking at strongly enough. So I would encourage you to look for your parents, look at a HECM mortgage so that they can get their money out to do the things they want to do, or cover medical expenses, or move to that new home if they want to downsize, for example.
So yeah, I guess that answers the second part of my question. So a couple who says, the house is too big, the kids are gone, we got to sell this and move. You're still encouraging them to you're still looking at them to buy something. Yeah.
I think that's a very effective strategy. There's a number of experts in the United States who really do a great job with HECM type mortgages to get people to get that money out to get into the home they want, or to cover contingencies like health care costs, long-term care costs.
Can you explain to me what fiduciary protection is and why it's important?
Really, it's more fiduciary liability. When you're dealing with a financial advisor, you want them representing you, not representing the institution they work for. Too many of the large brokerage houses really, their advisors who work with you are employed by a large institution, and they have a responsibility to that institution. I would prefer that people work with advisors who sit on their side of the table, not on the side of the table for an institution. Even though that individual may be trying to do their best work for them, they're still liable to the institution, or controlled by the institution, the contract they have there. But I prefer that people work with advisors who work with, like attorneys and CPAs, who are on your side of the table working solely for you, not for some other entity. Now, the fiduciary liability is a big issue, particularly in the qualified plan arena. And there's a big brouhaha going on right now with the Department of Labor's new fiduciary rules that are coming out that have been delayed again. And we don't know if they're actually going to become effective at any time in the near future. But I have been operating my practice as a fiduciary for almost 15 years now. We were way ahead of the curve in having a fiduciary relationship with a client, meaning we are personally liable for the recommendations and the activities we take on behalf of a client. So we take that very seriously, and right up front, we believe that we're serving in the best needs of the client.
Yeah. So I have your climbing the mountain of tax efficiency retirement partner chart, and it's interesting. Explain this to me.
Well, I made the analogy, if you look at Mount Everest as an example, there's been over 5,000 people who have climbed Mount Everest and gotten to the peak. I think around 500 of those people have died climbing Mount Everest. But what's interesting is that roughly 80% of the people who have died on Mount Everest died on the descent, not the ascent. And so my analogy or my metaphor is retirement planning is the same. Accumulating money is okay and a good endeavor, but how you decumulate and live off that money, you don't want to die coming down the financial mountain.
Right, so on the left side here, for people seeing, we'll put it on the screen. Left side, you have taxes on contributions, and on the right side, taxes on distributions. So this is the side you're talking about.
Well, I've got 14 strategies that we employ for the higher you go up that mountain, the more tax efficient your contributions to some form of a plan is. And the higher you climb that mountain, the more tax efficient your distributions on your money, including tax exempt money, tax exempt for life. And that is the pinnacle of, I think, of tax planning, is being able to have money that you can never outlive that comes back to you income tax exempt for the rest of your life.
Right, so at the bottom you have traditional compensation.
Yep.
And then as we move up, you have qualified plans, 401s, desired benefits like we spoke of, non-qualified deferred compensation,
Right.
409A plans, traditional deferred compensation. So then we start to get higher. We get to specialized plans with pre-tax funding, partially taxes withdrawals.
Right.
And then specialized plans with tax-efficient funding and tax-free withdrawals, Section 162 plan. And then at the very top, you have advanced tax-efficient lifetime income solutions, like your Prestige strategy, charitable LLC, family retirement account.
Yeah. Yeah, and for example, we've developed a plan we call a qualified leverage strategy. And most people have two buckets of money. They've got qualified plan money. When I say qualified, I'm talking about IRAs, 401ks, defined benefit plans. That's money that is currently tax deferred that you're going to have to pay taxes on once you start drawing down on it. And then you've got invested money. You've got money that's sitting there in a brokerage account or wherever it is. That money is also taxable money in the sense that anything you earn, the dividends, capital gains, is taxed. So you've got two taxable buckets. What we do is our qualified leverage strategy is we convert those two buckets of money into tax-exempt buckets for life. Now, that stretches credibility just saying that, but that's exactly what we do. We convert two taxable buckets into tax-exempt buckets for life.
I feel like sometimes this can be can be overwhelming as you get into all of this stuff for people who are just starting to think about this in their 40s. But you guys have taken an interesting tact at CBC that you've actually hired someone full-time to almost act as an educational part of what you guys are doing.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, when we establish a relationship with someone, people want to know they're going to get taken care of. And I mentioned earlier that, you know, people look at my gray hair and say, when you're not here any longer, who's going to take care of this? Well, I got my son-in-law who's age 50 and my son age 34 who can take over for me. But we had to go further than that. We have an education staff who will actually go out and meet with that business owner and their employees and continue an educational process. How do you apply for Social Security? What's the most efficient way to apply for and get your kids into and out of college from a financial perspective? So we provide all this educational planning to help clients climb that mountain of tax efficiency that we talked about earlier. So we try to educate the client. We don't try to turn them into lawyers and actuaries and CPAs. We try to give them information they can digest, understand, so that when we introduce them to one of our advanced concepts, they have an understanding of how that might work for them.
Yeah. So in closing, I want to talk about your books. I know you've done a lot of writing. Tell me a little bit about why you wanted to write these books.
Well, I've reached a point in my career where I want to help people and help other financial advisors do better work for their clients, and so that's the purpose of the books. The Red Zone book that you see is really designed for business owners and their key employees on how best to design, run, and manage a retirement plan so that employees will have a successful outcome and get through that red zone of retirement, the 5 years before and the 10 years after retirement, so that they don't face a 2008 where they got to go back to work. The other two books are anthologies with well-known artists, authors.
Jack Canfield.
Jack Canfield, author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and Brian Tracy's a business guru, if you will. And they were looking for some of the best ideas in the industry from various types of industries, and they selected my articles and my thoughts and my ideas as one of the chapters in those books.
Yeah.
And where I talk about climbing the mountain of tax efficiency, or I talk about the case of Paul and Lisa, and I take them through, which is a client that I've taken through 6 of these strategies on climbing the mountain, and they are now going to retire in a very comfortable manner where they're never going to run out of money, and they're going to be very tax efficient. They won't pay taxes on most of their retirement income.
Yeah, that's great. So in closing, last question, I want to just, for people watching this who maybe are still on that fence of whether they should be reaching out to you, I want to tell them why they should, but I want to do it in a way where, give me the top 3 or 4 reasons, or top 3 or 4 things that the person does that, that they do wrong, that the reasons they should really be on the phone. What are the top 4 things that let's say the normal person, goes wrong in thinking and starting to plan for their retirement, and really why they need to get a professional?
Well, one of the things is people tend to follow the herd.
Yeah.
I need to be in a 401k. Everybody else is doing a 401k. They're tending to work with advisors who just really want to manage your money. They don't really know these advanced tax strategies. So you need to have an advisor who's got better knowledge than just how to allocate your money between stocks and bonds. You need someone who's deep into the tax issues so that they can marry the investment you make with tax strategies. So those are the errors people are making, is that they follow the herd and really have the wrong type of advisors around them. Which brings to mind a book that was written in 1978 about a voluntary tax. It was a study by a Columbia professor for the Brookings Institution, and they couldn't figure out why, in an era where the estate tax was 77%, and you could lose 77% of your estate in a tax, and they couldn't understand why the DuPont family in Delaware was passing on their wealth to heirs at a 2 to 5% cost when it was 77%. And what they found out was that the biggest reason was they had advisors who had the knowledge and the tools to implement strategies that prevented them from paying the tax. Well, when I read that book, that was a seminal change for me, because I said, well, if that's true for the estate taxes, why isn't that true for income tax and capital gains tax?
Yeah.
And so I've developed these strategies that reduce the tax costs from capital gains and income tax.
So if people watching this want to get a hold of you, where can they go?
They can go to our website, www.columbiabenefits.com, or call our 800 number, 877-656-0530.
Peter, it's been a great conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on Spotlight Television.
My pleasure.